My name's James Christie. I'm a co-founder of a company called Artificial Workflow, and Artificial Workflow is an AI solutions company. It was born out of my experiences as a consultant myself. So I was with EY in their advisory practice for 9 years. I was also with a number of small boutique firms. And it was in that capacity, I was working on a couple of projects and I needed some help. And I couldn't get juniors at that time. So I thought I'd play with some of the AI tools that were out there. And it was incredible in terms of the way it accelerated the way I worked. It lifted my quality, which was a bit of a personal surprise. And I thought, look, this is going to change the way consultants work. If only there was a platform that we could use. So I met up with a couple of other guys, and we all agreed that this was an opportunity. And we created Artificial Workflow. Our first product was an AI consulting platform called Echobase, which we launched in June of last year. We've subsequently upgraded it 3 or 4 times, and now it's a tool that's being used in predominantly Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and the US. So what I was going to do today was talk you through how I see AI in the consulting industry or the consulting sector changing into the future, and what it can mean for actually as practitioners, both at a personal level, but also then in a practice at a practice level as well. So I'm going to show in a moment a presentation, and at the end of the presentation, I'll give you a demonstration of Echobase as well. And I appreciate people will probably have questions. And if you wouldn't mind, there is a section at the end where we'll take questions rather than doing it throughout the presentation. So by all means, jot down your thoughts and we can have a good discussion at the end of this. So what I'll do now is I will share my screen. So give me a moment. And you should see a PowerPoint presentation come up into view very soon. I believe it's there now. So as Chelsea mentioned, the topic of the conversation today is the impact of generative AI on the future of consulting. So what I'd like to cover off in our conversation today is the first is just an overview of AI. And I know most of us are probably aware of different aspects of AI, but I just thought it'd be worthwhile just checking in on that to understand what we're talking about when we specifically talk about generative AI. We'll then have a look at the AI adoption journey. And so that is from individuals in their adoption, but also organizationally. What does it look like when organizations start to move through an adoption process? The third part is we'll look at the implications for the consulting profession. So specifically, what are those skills that you're going to need to be able to support clients on their AI adoption journey? And the fourth, as I said, was a demonstration of Echobase, so you can see it in practice. And then the fifth is we'll do a Q&A at the end. So I'll start off with a bit of an overview of AI. And the key, I guess the starting point here is that when you think about AI, it's come to the forefront of our conversations over the last 2 years. But really, AI as a practice has been, well, it was started in 1956, actually, by a gentleman called John McCarthy out of Dartmouth University in the US. And he pulled together a conference and they coined the term, the phrase artificial intelligence. And from there on, they started to shape the practice. But it really came to prominence in terms of public awareness in 2017 when Google released what they call their Generative Pre-trained Transformer, so GPT. And it was that advancement that really kicked off the whole Gen AI space. And it was really popularized in November of 2022 when OpenAI released ChatGPT, and that was really, I'd say, the starting gun went off. Starting gun went off for organizations saying, what is this and how can we take advantage of it? But also starting gun for investment by all the large tech companies that are saying, we need to play in this space. And so you've seen incredible amounts of investment go into the AI arena. So as I said, just as a starting point, AI is the large area of theory, I guess it is. But the generative AI, you can see it's a subset of machine learning and deep learning. So it is a really specific and a smaller component of AI in its totality. If you start to think about who are the main players in particularly the Gen AI space, there's two kind of layers that you need to think about. The first is layer one, or the organizations that are building these frontier models, that are investing significantly in building these models that we access. And then there's layer two, which are the application layers that sit on top of those models. So with the frontier models in layer one, the main players you can see there are your typical technology companies. It's Google, it's Microsoft, it's Apple. But you've had some newcomers come into it recently. So OpenAI as an organization didn't exist. I think it was only about 5 years ago that it was created, and Anthropic as well. That's another new player. So they're probably the top tier. And then underneath that, you've got some of the smaller but emerging organizations. So Mistral being a French organization, XAI, which is coming out of Elon Musk's X stable. And then there are a number of Chinese organizations out there as well that are probably don't have the same level of public awareness that we've got in the West, but are doing equally similar interesting things in the East. So that's some of the layer one players, but layer two, there are hundreds of layer two players, and every week a new application is being launched and a new service is being thought about to basically leverage this development in the large language models. So we play in the layer two space as well. But when you think about it, why are all these companies rushing into this space? So they're rushing into this space because the economic activity, projected economic activity by 2030, caused by the adoption of AI, is estimated to be of the value of similar value about $15.7 trillion. It's a significant amount. And a lot of that's going to come in from, you can see how it's divided up, consumption side. So this is product development. This is additional expenditure on AI. And then the second part of that is productivity. So 6.6 trillion in productivity gains. And it's usually in the productivity space that consultants get a lot of their work. So you can see of that 6.6 trillion, consultants will be playing heavily in that. And that's in terms of process efficiency will be coming through there. Consultants can also play in that consumption space. So whether you're helping clients define new services or helping them refine them, existing services, that's the other opportunity. So as you can see, 15.7 trillion, there's a lot of activities going to happen. And consultants are typically the change agents that do drive a lot of these advancements in with their clients. So, we will be the catalysts to achieving that value. So when you think about, the benefits of AI, a study has been performed about 3 or 4 years ago by Deloitte that was asked the question, where are you applying AI? Where are you finding that your value is being realized? And not surprisingly, the first area is around, let's see, at the top there is around product enhancements, building out new functionality, improving the performance of existing products. So it is that revenue uplift component. But the second and third all come down to that productivity. So that's around operational efficiencies, driving process improvements, and essentially then freeing up the time of employees so they can do higher value activities, or in some cases, so they can go home on time maybe as well. But nonetheless, that's what's considered as the major benefits that are going to be realized out of the adoption of AI. But that was a very quick kind of recap of what is AI and who are the main players in that space. In terms of AI and an adoption journey, if you think about it, we're all on a personal adoption journey, but some of the organizations that we work with, they're also on their own adoption journey. And some studies have been done on the different stages organizations go through as they adopt AI and what that means in terms of some of the characteristics and also their operating model as to how they need to reorganize as they mature in their adoption. So the first stage is, and I'd say the first stage we've probably witnessed over the last 2 years, where we call it the AI frontier. And that is that it was new. There were no rules around it within organizations. New applications were popping up all the time, and individuals were just on their own, out of their own motivation, were adopting these tools and using them in the workplace and at home as well. So no control, no visibility, just a lot of trial going on, to the amusement, I'd say, of most people. That wasn't acceptable. So there's the next stage of that is moving into what they call islands of experimentation. So this is where some of these point applications are being officially endorsed by the organizations and saying, this team is going to use this tool to see what the benefits are. And if it works, we may consider winding it out to other parts of the organization. So typically organizations at that point have really low levels of expertise in the space. There's no real formalized frameworks and governance models in place. It's more really a test and learn environment. And I would say that that's where the majority of organizations are today. And if you think back to your clients that you're working with, there's probably, you're probably able to see that, those characteristics in that workplace. Some are already starting to move into the third stage, which is what they call centers of excellence. So this is where you start to centralize AI expertise into smaller groups of people who have become quite skilled at using it and know how to apply it effectively. You start to formalize some of those capabilities within the organization, either in terms of role descriptions, either in terms of the training that's been developed around the skills uplift, but it's also in terms of things like governance frameworks. So they start to now take shape and start to guide how an organization starts to apply AI within the way it works. And it's also probably the starting point for an AI strategy to be developed, knowing now that it's got the organization's attention. They really do need to formalize then how we're going to actually adopt this at scale. So they'll go through that center of excellence and it's got its problems. So it does usually create bottlenecks in certain parts of the way it's being used. And there will be other people in the organization saying, we also want access to this more freely. So they'll mature out of the center of excellence and move into what they call the federation of excellence. So that's more of a distributed model where you're achieving AI at scale within your organization. And you've got agreed operating principles in place, and you start to see broad adoption and broad benefits across the organization. I'd say only very few organizations are at that stage, and they probably have come in even before the Gen AI euphoria arrived about 2 years ago. The fifth stage is what we call AI-centric firm or AI-centric organization. And this is really, it's dependent upon the AI capabilities reaching a certain point. So artificial general intelligence is probably the catalyst to achieve this. But this will be organizations where AI will be playing a very significant role in our process execution and in terms of taking on some of the majority of the responsibilities that humans have been doing in the workplace. So it will require a complete transformation of that organization in terms of the way it operates. So new processes, new role description, new organizational designs, and it'll be something that I don't think we're quite ready for in terms of really the level of adoption and then the implications for people as well. But either way, as I said, that's a classic adoption journey. I said a lot of organizations are in that island of experimentation. We'll probably start to see some moving to that centers of excellence. Just be aware, as I said, just look around your organizations that you're working with and kind of assess and see where they're at. And then from that, you'll see how the needs will change from a consulting service perspective as well. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about was the potential of the types of AI that's going to be adopted within an organization, and then what that means for the also the people in organization. So if you think about where we are today, well, actually, sorry, I'll take you across the horizontal first. It's we're really looking at AI capabilities here. So about 2 years ago, we had the emergence of the large language models, which really enabled things like ChatGPT. They've expanded them into vision models. So you're now starting to get the ability to do images. You're now starting to get to do video as well as input and output. And so we're moving to that era of multimodal models. The next major step is coming is what they call AGI, so artificial general intelligence. And the idea is that AI will reach a point where it's smarter than most people in an organization, and as smart as a group of people who are probably at a PhD level. After AGI, they're going to start to just advance that and make incremental gains on it. But the next major step will be what they call ASI, so artificial superintelligence. And artificial and superintelligence will be AI at a level that it's smarter than any human being, and it's self-learning, and it's starting to have capabilities that will just really transform the way we work, but also the way we live as well. So that's the developments across the bottom. Across the vertical, what that means is we're going to move from AI supporting humans at an individual level doing very independent and small tasks. The next level up is we're going to have AI that's empowered to support multiple tasks at an individual level. Moving into then team-based activities and team-based processes, you're still going to have humans guiding the AI, but the next level after that is then you've got the AI integrated business functions. So that's where AI will be pretty much running the core processes in an organization or in a function, and where humans will be guiding it over the top and making decisions for it or setting missions for it. But ultimately then moving into an AI-centric organization where AI is the dominant capability within the organization. And so you can see that that's the levels of progress in terms of technology, in terms of the people and organization. But what that means is we'll move through these different types of agents. And so you'll start to hear language. Well, at the moment, we're sitting in this independent agent space, potentially with some action agents as well, if you start to add in some workflow tools. But the real game changer will be when these autonomous agents come. And so that's teams of agents performing process execution. And that's when I think we'll start to notice that's a significant role redefinition for a lot of people. We'll then move into integrated agents, but ultimately up into strategic AI enablement. So that's when the AI is running those core processes for you. So as I said, we're here in this kind of independent and action agent stage, ultimately moving out to the autonomous agent. That's the next major leap forward. So I guess the point in saying this is that you'll hear a lot of hype around AI, and that AI can do all these fantastic things for you currently. But the reality is they're still sitting at this individual level, performing individual tasks, or if you've got them kind of workflow enabled, but it's a very pre-programmed pathway that they're going down. So we're not yet at that stage where AI can literally take over your job for you. So that's where we are in terms of the evolution. Now, so the question naturally comes, what are the implications for consulting? The way that we've looked at it is through what we call an AI squared proposition. So there's two parts to that. The first part is how can you adopt AI internally as a professional to drive efficiencies in the way that you work? So how can you basically reduce the amount of time that you're taking to do some of those activities that you're performing on your day-to-day basis? So once you've reached a certain level of experience and certain level of confidence, the next part for consultants is that how can you start to support your clients with their AI adoption as well? And that represents potential revenue opportunity, new service opportunities leading to new revenue streams, either yourself or as more of a collective as a firm. So we'll talk about both of those. But from an internal perspective, one of the things that you can use AI for, and this is a screenshot out of Echobase, is that we've built these custom agents around classic consulting use cases. So you can see as an example, if you're doing benchmarking activities, you can use an AI agent that can support you with that benchmarking analysis through to a competitor analysis is another example. If you're doing some competitor analysis, you're able to pull in all the information around your company, maybe your top 2 or 3 competitors, and you can start to do some comparative analysis on that as well. Other examples of proposal writing. That's always a major pain point for consultants, is the time that you spend writing proposals. It's usually done after hours as well, because you're delivering during the day. But the idea is that you can, there's all these different types of agents that you can think about and integrate into the way you work to accelerate the way you work, and basically free up some time so that you can start to work on other activities. So the key thing is that you've got to think about, what am I doing as a process? And in that process, where am I taking data and processing it, either to create something, to analyze something, or just to query something, and then think about then which agent can I apply to that. So that's one way of internal adoption. I've just we've done a study of some of the original firms that have started using Echobase. We asked them to compare how long it took to do a certain project using AI and compare what it would take traditionally. In this case, we had an organizational strategy firm that was doing 2 current state assessments on different organizations, but following the same methodology. And what they found was that following the traditional methodology, it took them 87 hours to complete end-to-end that piece of work, whereas it only took 44.5 hours to complete using AI. And they found, so that was a 49% reduction in time across that project. And the areas where they found that they were able to save the most was in the light blue, which is themes and insights. So typically it took them about an hour per topic, major topic, to go through all the desktop materials, to go through all the interview notes, to extract the key themes. Whereas with AI, it only took them 5 minutes. So that was a significant saving for them, because there was about 8 to 10 major themes that they were working with, and they were able to save 55 minutes per theme. The other was in the reporting. So it would typically take them about an hour to build 2 or 3 slides per topic. And that was reduced down to 20 minutes. So again, a 40-minute saving to produce those slides, which when you think about it, it's a rather time-consuming activity. But that's just 2 examples of how an organization who adopted AI internally with the way that they worked were able to save about a 49% of the time on a project. So the other thing to think about in terms of consulting firms, and I appreciate that this is a fractional community, but I think it also applies for external organizations, so clients as well. But you've got to think about then, what's the impact of AI? If we're going to be saving all this time, and typically work that would be done by a junior could now be done by somebody else, you're going to think, what's the impact on the shape of a typical consulting firm? So consulting firms are usually some type of pyramid shape, where you've got the partners at the top and then the juniors at the bottom are forming a large base. And so they're using the leverage model. But into the future, it's potentially going to change into more of a diamond shape, essentially, where you've got more of the work being done at that manager level, and you have less of a need for some of those juniors, because AI is potentially replacing them. So there's an impact then on your recruitment, the way that you remunerate, the way that you essentially organize and assign work across a different structure. So one of the things if you think about it, at the top, you still need that sector expertise that sits with the partners. But at the manager level, they're probably going to be responsible for data collection particularly if there's a lot of interfacing with clients and stakeholder interviews or collecting data from them. So you'd want somebody fairly senior, someone with a bit of confidence and experience to perform that role. But then once they've collected the data, there's the data preparation and prompting could be done by a junior, but it's done very quickly. So you probably need less of them. They'd also, at a manager level, they'd be playing a quality role because of the work that's coming out of the AI. You do need somebody to look at it, to check that it's actually makes sense, and that you're not exposing yourself to risk of putting something in front of the client that potentially shouldn't be, that might not be right. So yeah, think about the shape of an organization and what it will look like under AI. The other thing to think about, and this is at a personal level as well, is what's your individual model going to be? There was a study done by, I think it was released in the Harvard Business Review, but it was based on, I think it was Bain or BCG, one of the two that had adopted AI into their firm and studied how their employees used it. And they found that there were two types of employees. There was one they called the centaurs and ones they called the cyborgs. The centaurs decided that the way that they were going to do it, there were specific tasks that they said, this is always going to be done by a human, and I'm going to always apply myself to that type of task. But there are other activities which I think I can apply AI on and get some benefit out of that as well. So they adopted a bit of a hybrid model is the way they worked. Versus the cyborg essentially put AI into every aspect of their work. So they were adopting different tools, and everything that came into them, their whole day was integrated between both human and AI. So they used AI to assist the way they worked as much as possible. One model is not better than the other model, but the point is that you've got to work out, what is my model going to be? And off that, you need to then think about then the types of work you do from that as well. But that's the second thing is to think about what's your personal model. Are you going to be a cyborg or are you going to be a centaur? So that's the internal piece. I mentioned AI squared, firstly internal, secondly external. So if you think about the role of consultants, we're actually perform the role of change agent for a lot of our clients. We go in there and we diagnose, we go in there and design and recommend, we go in there and we help them change to adopt the recommendations. So there's a role for consultants into the future to support their clients on their AI adoption journey. And if you think back to that process I talked about where they go through that islands of experimentation, then the centers of excellence and so on. Underlying that is also a technology that they'll be adopting. And this is expressing the kind of adoption process from a technology level. So you can see at one end, it's very simple applications, and the other end, it's very advanced applications. The idea is that, particularly 12 months ago, we're all starting off at this simple application. We're all looking at the different tools that are out there and saying, maybe we should try this. But once we've absorbed and we've tried some of those simple applications, we then start to move down into integrated and customized agents. So that is, can we put we'll replace an existing system and put an AI supported system in its place and trying to get some efficiencies in that location. So again, point solutions, but integrated into your existing systems. This has probably got about an 18-month lifespan to it. And I think very soon, and we're starting to see it already, clients are starting to ask for AI integrated into existing systems. This has probably got another 18-month lifespan onto it. And then ultimately, in about 3 years, organizations are going to ask around how can we significantly transform our core processes and our organization to become an AI-led organization. And with that comes that massive amount of consulting work to support them on that journey. But either way, if you're supporting your clients through the adoption of some simple solutions, and you're there for them to help them move into those integrated solutions, but ultimately you'll be well positioned for this transformation work that will come as well. So the key thing is you need to have a level of confidence and a level of experience with AI to be able to support your clients on this journey as they move through the adoption of more complex and more advanced AI solutions. So converting that then into, well, what type of services, what type of skills will I need to actually support clients on that journey? I've converted this into a bit of a kind of a little bit of a pathway here. But the idea is that you're starting simple with really basic processes. This is clients, they'll be starting simple with the really basic processes, single tasks, and they'll be moving up into a more complex space. But nonetheless, when they're following that pathway, the typical types of services that they'll be seeking and they'll need to support them on that pathway is everything from upfront, you'll be the strategy components of it. So that's the governance frameworks, their actual AI strategy, and how that then integrates with their digital strategy. There'll also be kind of opportunity assessments. You'll need to go in there and diagnose, this is where we think, the low-hanging fruit are, and this is probably the next level up in what you could do in terms of your AI adoption. So there's all that kind of diagnosis around their readiness evaluation as well. Typically out of this, you'd probably be producing current state assessments as well. So looking at their operating model in terms of people, process, technology, and data, and getting a view on where they are today, but then where they need to be into the future, and then what you need to change in order to get there. So if you've got that current state, future state design capability, that's absolutely going to be in demand. Technology selection as well. So this might be an area that you're already comfortable with, but if you're not, potentially somewhere that you need to develop. So this is understanding what are the different solutions that are out there, and helping clients go through that kind of fit and that selection process to say, we think these are the most appropriate tools for you to use at this point in time. Building proofs of concept, so helping them actually stand up and test and trial a proof of concept to demonstrate the value that they can achieve and learn from that. So again, that's usually done with supportive consultants. If you think about the broader change effort, there's also a program management requirement. So if you're in the program management space, you'll need to become aware of potentially how AI kind of extends the digital transformation process. There's a lot of implementation support as well. So if you think about all the times that your clients haven't had the capacity and they need a pair of spare hands on deck to help with the change process. Culture and change as well is a massive one. And we've seen there's a lot of resistance, pockets of resistance around AI, that fear factor of what it is. So having people who are skilled at culture and change management is going to be in demand. And then training as well. That's another service that they'll be needing in terms of either today around generic AI training. What is AI? How can we use it? But into the future, it'll be specific to a solution and a process that you're working with. So you can see there's as they follow that pathway of adoption, there's almost like a repeat of these services, or many of these services that they'll need support with. So there's a lot of opportunity for consultants on this kind of journey, the adoption journey. And look, just one way, if you think about your clients and I want to help them take the first step. And if I go back here, and that first step is in that kind of less complex, narrow scope, low cost, low risk is what we say. This is Echobase, the tool that we've developed, where you can build functional agents. So as an example, you could stand up HR recruitment and selection agents, a whole series of agents for HR, or a whole series of agents for finance or marketing, whatever it might be. And your client can then start using more broadly across their organization, can start to use AI on a daily basis. So when they reach that point where they've got a task that it's around, in this example, recruitment and selection, they can use this tool to help them in that process. But if this is the first step and this is the future state, to get here, as I said, there's a massive amount of work involved in terms of the current state assessment, but also the future state design, the data that you've got to analyze, the setting up of these agents, the training on it. And there's a significant amount of work to help a client realize this first step in what I'd call a simple solution. So I guess the key point here is that they're not going to be able to do it by themselves. They're definitely going to need external support from consultants, and whether you're somebody who's just advising them around this is the process that you should go through, or whether you're actually delivering this as well, there's going to be a significant amount of opportunities in this space. So that's a lot of talking by me. So what I thought I'd do now is just move into a bit of a demonstration of Echobase to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. And what I'll do is I'll just escape out of this screen and I'll go to Echobase. So this is the tool that we've built. It's called Echobase. And Echobase is built around dashboards and dashboards of the agents in particular. So in this case, you can see we've got a series of tiles that all have different kind of names against them. They're all what we call AI agents. And those agents can be set up to perform those specific tasks that I mentioned. You could either create permanent agents. In this case, a permanent agent would be like a proposal writing agent that you'd keep a repository of all of your past proposals. And when a project came up, that you just call into that agent and ask it for support in writing a proposal. So that's a permanent agent. You could have temporary agents, and the temporary agents could be for, if you've got a project on and you've got a specific task that you've been given that you need to do either some data analysis around or create something from it. And then once it's finished and that activity is over, you can then delete the agent and then move on to the next task. So there's a fair degree of flexibility, but the way you create the agents is quite simple. You just click on New Agent. You give that agent a name. I'm just going to call this test. And the next thing you do is you select an agent type. So this is where I mentioned before that we've pre-built all these agents around custom consulting use cases. So I'll just click on the filter here and we'll pull up the consulting example. So you can see we've got about 40 plus agents that we've built. And the idea is that you just select one. I'll select change narrative here. But that brings across a whole series of system prompts and system settings, which we've tested to optimize this agent for delivering change narratives, if that was the piece of work that you're doing. So I'll close that. But the idea is that you create a new agent, you give it a name, you select the agent type, and then you connect it with a data set that you would have curated previously. You click on save, and now this agent's been created here, test, which you can then start to work with. So it's a fairly flexible, fairly quick in terms of the way you can set them up. There was a step before this, which I didn't show you, but I'll show you now. You do need to, the way Echobase works, it works on your data sets. So you do need to curate a data set prior to setting up your agent so that you can connect the two. So in this case, I'll just create a new agent folder called test. But the idea is you can upload into Echobase different files that you're working with. Now, you'll see that these are now being processed. They're being ingested, is what they're called. It's being turned, a normal Word document or document with text in it is being converted into a vector format, which is essentially words being represented as numbers so that the large language models can understand what they're saying. And now it's ready. Now I've curated that data set, it's ready to work with. So as I said, in this example, I've got policy repositories, I've got gap analysis, I've got financial analysis. I've already pre-built all these folders and I've attached the agents to them. I'll give you an example of how they can work. Actually, the other thing you'll see is that we've got Google Gemini, we've got Claude's, Anthropic's Claude, and we've got OpenAI's ChatGPT. So we've got probably the three best models out there. There's always a lot of work being done. I think Meta AI has just released a new model, which everyone's pretty impressed by as well. But these tend to be the three leading models. I'll give you an example of what you can do with some of them. So here's, let's say you've just run a whiteboard or a workshop with a client. You've got notes on a whiteboard, handwritten notes, and you need to go away and you need to convert that into some output. Might be some slides, might be some kind of a summary of what we talked about. You could take a photo of that, and you can then upload that photo into the tool here. So let me show you. Okay, yeah. This is actually, this is a handwritten diagram on a piece of paper, which I've just taken a photo of. But I can ask it, what is this image about? And it will analyze the image, and it will tell you what the image is about. So it's actually the hand-drawn concept model of a business, sorry, a hand-drawn model of sorry, hand-drawn concept of a business model. There we go. And so there we go. It's seen, it's read exactly what I've written there in handwriting. It's telling you it's a concept map exploring business model concept for consulting firms. So then I can even ask it, so what improvements can be made to this model? And so now it will go and it will use all of its training to suggest, here, how about you could improve it in these ways. So if you think about you've just done the workshop and you've got to write the slides, it can, one, interpret the text that you've written, but it also can help you then progress that image into something that's ready to present to the client. So you'd copy and paste that into PowerPoint or Word, whatever you work with. So that's an example of using an image and working with an image. What I'll do now is I'll show something else. A good one's a desktop research. Let's just say that you've been given large documents from the client saying, here's 4 or 5 reports, and you need to read these to understand what's going on, and then I'd like you to suggest a course of action. So that's a classic desktop research example. So in this case, I've got 3 documents from a city council here, and I'm just asking, it's their strategic plan, their operating plan, and some implementation plan. So they're fairly large documents, 80 pages each. And I can quite simply ask it, what are the strategic priorities over a period, 2023 to 2024. So it will go away and it will tell me that these are the strategic priorities. So it's found that information. And you can start to follow it up with the other questions, such as, what are the key performance indicators? So if you've got a prompting strategy in mind, if these are the questions I need to answer, you can prompt it appropriately and it'll extract that information for you fairly quickly. So in this case, it was around performance indicators. And it's found them relatively quickly. It'd probably take me 10, 15 minutes to find that thumbing through the document. So I've done that in 1 minute. So that's an example of, again, desktop research, 4 or 5 documents, fairly large volume. How do I summarize that? How do I actually pull out some of the core concepts that I'm searching for in that desktop research? I'll give you another example here, a financial analysis. In this case, what I've got is it's Apple's annual report. And I can actually ask it to, it's an annual report, so it's a mix of financials and it's a mix of descriptions of product and how well they've performed. But in this case, I can ask it to perform an analysis of Apple's performance using common financial ratios and determine how well it's performing. And so it will go through and it's showing me the first thing was around profitability ratios, then it's doing liquidity ratios, leverage ratios, and so on. And then it's giving me a summary and a conclusion. So I've been able to quickly take all that information, which is in the Apple document, and run some financial analysis over and above what they've done already. And then you can further interrogate this if you want to do, if you provide a description of Apple's core products and services, it will go ahead and do that fairly quickly. So there we go. Core products around iPhone, the Mac, and iPad, so on. So no surprises there. And then into wearables and then into its services as well. So as I said, it basically can accelerate the way you work. It can lift your quality. It can help you. It can help you on if you think about a typical project and all the different activities you're doing, you can essentially apply it to certain activities to support the way you work. So that was a quick walkthrough of Echobase and how it can work. We've got a number of firms using it. So we've got things like supply chain firms. We've got firms that specialize in aged care. We've got firms that specialize in organizational design, social consulting. So a broad range of organizations that are making use of this today. But what I'll do is I'll go back into the presentation, and I think we've got just over 10 minutes. What I'll do is just open it up to questions, if there are any questions at all. And I've only got a picture of 4 people, so I cannot see if there are questions coming from it. So I might see, Chelsea, if you're able to, if anyone's got their hand up, just help coordinate any questions. Any questions at all? Actually, what I might do is escape out of this, stop sharing, and that way then I can see.
James, we've got a question in the chat. How is customer data protected? Are the trained models local?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's everyone's. Honestly, that is the #1 question that we get all the time. So there are a couple of aspects of client data security, and the first is that when I showed you the document upload process. When you upload a document into Echobase, it's going onto our AWS servers, which have AWS's security protocols and then our security protocols on top of that. So it's in an environment where we're going for what they call SOC 2 level compliance, which is probably one of the highest standards that you can achieve. So so that's our infrastructure. Now, the second is that there's an action where you're calling on these large language models through their APIs, and they've got a promise in their terms of service that says, we will not use any data that gets moved between your infrastructure and our model. We'll not use any of that data for training purposes. So, and the reason why they've done that is, one, there was an outcry saying, this is terrible that you're taking all of our data and you're using it to train on. It's confidential data. And the second is that it's part of their commercial model. If they didn't provide that condition in their terms of service, no one would use them. So it's essentially a promise, and it's a promise if they ever broke it with anybody, would probably mean the end of their business. So, but that's essentially the only way around that is, so these are all cloud-based services. The only way around that would be to build a model on premise. And that's a different exercise. It's a more of a costly exercise. It's committing you to a certain piece of infrastructure and certain technology. And then there's going to have to be processes that are used to update that on a regular basis. So it's a more of expensive way of getting around that problem. But organizations that are doing services for defense, anything from the Defense Department, typically go down that route. So when you just need absolute certainty of that the data is not leaking, and it's typically the defense clients that have got that requirement where they'll build in on-premise. Okay. Anyway, are there more in the chat there?
Yeah. How do your different agents differ? They all seem to be using the same Gen AI models. Is it the different knowledge bases?
Yeah, so the way that we differentiate ourselves is there's a couple of things. The first is that we're multi-model. So whereas if you go with, say, OpenAI and you're wedded to OpenAI, that's it. Whereas what we're saying is that they're all coming out with really good features and they're all kind of leapfrogging each other, but they're also all good at different things. So we have become kind of agnostic, and we'll put the best models in place. So so that's one aspect. We're multi-model. The second is that we are building these custom agents around the consulting use cases. And we're doing it generally with our clients who are saying, we've got this other type of use case that we use. Can you help build that with us? So you won't get OpenAI or Anthropic, for that matter, sitting on a Zoom call with you, building those agents with you. So building all the specialized agents. And the third is that you can collaborate around our tool. So 4 or 5 people can get into one agent, and maybe if you're all working on the same piece of work and you divvied it up, you're able to see what others are doing and what their prompts are. You can then move prompts over into somebody else's space and have them work on it. So that's probably the 3 areas that we differ versus the going into one of the large language model providers. Chelsea, I've just opened this up. Looks great. How do you differ? They all seem to be using. So that was Edwards. How is customer data protected? I think we've covered that one. Are there any other questions there? No. Well, if there are no other questions, oh, one new message. Here we go. What's this? When you train the agent, is this? Yes, it's a RAG-based solution. That's right. So RAG stands for retrieval augmented generation. So that essentially is saying that to the side, you've got your own data set, which you're keeping refreshed and updated on a regular basis. And you're mixing the knowledge of the large language model with your data set to be able to generate those specific responses that you're looking for. So, I mean, that's the important thing. If you think about it, when you work with a client, you primarily go in there and you collect data on them. So you want to be able to build data sets of that data that you've collected and interrogate it and work with it and query it. So the RAG model is good for that. Are you using software such as Make or Zapier to automate? Yes, we are. So typically, and said we've started to see that become more of a request now, Edward. That they're asking for AI automation, and so we can support them with that. There's also other platforms like AutoGen Studio or just thinking of the other one we use, Mind Studio. So there are other solutions as well where you can build, a bit of a flow, a workflow to support automation. If I were to summarize it, 12 months ago, there was absolutely a need for, and the interest was in what we call independent agents, where it was that agent that could just do a single task. Now we're moving into more of the action agents where they can perform a number of activities or automate a workflow. So that's the big difference, I'd say, in the last 3 months. And it's just people becoming aware of what's possible and really trying to solve some internal business problems that they've got with really inefficient processes. Okay. Well, we have 5 minutes to go, Chelsea, but it seems like, unless there's no other questions, thank you, Mike. Thanks for your time, everybody. I appreciate lunchtime, and you've taken an hour out to be on a call with us. So I really appreciate your attention.
Yeah, and if you are interested in Echobase, there is a link on the networking document just to make it easier for you guys. And there is a free trial on there as well, if anyone is interested. Also, we have our lunch club on Thursday on how can you tell when your client needs expert support. So if you're interested in that, please do come along to that as well on Thursday at 1 o'clock. And a massive thank you, James, for the Lunch and Learn today. Really interesting. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chelsea.
Thanks, everyone, for attending, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.